The Rising of the Shield Hero. If there's one anime that I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with, it's this one. That is to say, I love the setting, I love the characters, I love the power system, but I hate some of the ways it's utilized. But how can it help us grow as writers? Let's think about it. For those of you who aren't in the know, Rising of the Shield Hero started as a Japanese light novel series by Aneko Usagi. It was originally published as a web novel, ironically, just like our series, but has since been picked up by Media Factory, where it was adapted into a manga series by Aya Q. It received an anime adaptation starting in 2015, where it started airing on Crunchyroll. Right off the bat, as far as isekais go, I gotta say I liked the opening of Shield Hero. You've got the protagonist, Naofumi Iwatani, who's basically like every other anime isekai protagonist. A normal guy, somewhere between the ages of 16 and 30, who ends up transported to a magical world. There's nothing special or unique here except for the way that it happens. Typically it's some kind of car accident or a random street attack, but this time, he's crushed by a bunch of books. Oh, what a way to go. Anyway, what was neat here is the world Naofumi was transported into was the world of the book. It was giving mysterious play vibes with the universe of the four gods, and you know, it still is kind of like that. Naofumi is one of 4 legendary heroes given special arms by the world's magical system: spear, bow, sword, and shield. The other heroes are really just there to show the stark contrast between how the world treats them versus how they treat Naofumi. So their names aren't really that important to me. If I need to refer to them during the rest of the video, it's Spear Hero, Bow Hero, and Sword Hero. When Naofumi gets to the world, he's introduced to the other heroes and finds out that he's the only one of them who doesn't understand the concept of online games. Obviously, this is a story's way of setting a clear line between the expectation and the reality. The expectation in a lot of isekai fantasy, Sword Art, Dot Hack, Shangri-La Frontier to an extent,
Log Horizon
has this expectation that the hero is some kind of gamer and the world works on gamer rules. Naofumi even has a stat screen he can bring up. This isn't hyperbolic, so just because his lack of knowledge and his relegation to a support class because of his shield, as in none of them can use any weapons that aren't their legendary gear, meaning Naofumi can't use a sword and shield, he can only use his shield. No attacks. And that becomes important later because it means he needs a party member to do the fighting for him. Enter Mine. While all the other heroes are getting to know their prospective teammates, Naofumi meets Mine, and knows that she looks a little like the character from the book that he was reading. Now, Mine is a villain here, and I feel important to preface this. She plays out the role of the typical monomyth of what's called the Temptress, like Morgan Le Fay to King Arthur, or Megara to Disney's Hercules. The Temptress is a character, usually a woman, who represents drawing the hero away from his moral path. She's often a herald of his downfall. In Rising of the Shield Hero, this is who Mine is. However, we are lured into trusting her at first. She presents as an earnest and nurturing companion until getting a night alone with Naofumi, where she robs him. Not just robs him, but also runs to other legendary heroes, claiming he assaulted her. Naturally, the other 3 heroes turn on Naofumi. He's brought before the king, where it's learned that Mine is also his daughter, and, spoiler warning, the 2 of them set this whole thing up just to screw over the Shield Hero. I cannot begin to tell you how many people took a huge issue with this plot point, especially in the United States. A lot of online spaces around anime and Crunchyroll were left with a bad taste in the mouth by what was essentially boiled down to woman use false allegations to ruin man's life, and the way that it seemed the anime was distilling this incredibly false, misogynistic narrative as a major plot device for the series' first villain arc. I gotta say, even as a casual observer who was really just getting into the show at the time, I had to admit it wasn't gonna be well received. But it felt a little bit too early to just write off the series as some kind of incel fantasy. And the story is marketed as a dark fantasy, so some heavy elements are a little expected. Besides, so many modern isekai are oversaturated with high levels of fan service and overly perverted characters to where sometimes it's hard to see the story through the breast physics. So how does Naofumi redeem himself? Cast out, stripped of his gear, his respect, his dignity, the city treats him like a pariah for a crime he didn't commit, to the nation's princess no less. The other heroes won't speak to him, and Spear Hero is ready on sight with this man. Ironically, he's the exact kind of isekai protagonist I was just saying really gets under my skin, the womanizer type who uses his hero status to surround himself with women. Honestly, how droll. Polyamory is one thing, but this? Ugh. No support from the kingdom, no support from the guilds. Nobody in their right mind would want to join the party of a criminal, so he can't even find any allies to help him up his game. But if he doesn't level up and help stop the calamity that's bound to happen, everyone is going to blame him for the failure. Wow, they really beat Naofumi up with this plot. The psychological torture he must have gone through would break your average person. And, unfortunately for Naofumi, he's your average person. The first bit of Shield Hero, as we're establishing the world, also represents a total fall from grace for the hero who's supposed to be our main protagonist, the one the story is about. Someone who has the floor completely ripped out from under him to hit rock bottom, not knowing who to trust or where to go. He finds himself falling in the lowest of the low that humanity has ever produced. Slavers. It's here that Naofumi meets Raftalia, a girl with raccoon ears and a tail. These demi-humans are common in the world before heroes and generally regarded as less than human and therefore usable as slaves. Mind you, this is all perfectly legal in the same country that was going to execute him for assaulting the princess. We'll get into women's role in upholding white supremacy in a second. So Naofumi learns that basically the only way he can currently obtain party members for his quests is to purchase them. And that's exactly what he does. He buys Raftalia from the slaver and marks her with a special contract that is embedded right on her skin. This brand allows him to exert painful control over her if she won't follow his commands. It's sort of like an even more messed up version of a monster catcher game. This is later emphasized when he gets his second party member, a bird monster named Philo. These slave crests, when combined with the shield's power, allows them to level up faster than normal and also allows Naofumi to issue complex battle commands, but the downside is the punishing effects, and it should be noted he rarely ever uses these. Still, I, for the life of me, feel like there could have been a better way to utilize this in the narrative beyond slavery actually makes me stronger, yo! Maybe, again, it's because being an American and the chattel slavery trade being a very long, dark stain on the nation's history that still affects us to this day makes me just feel extremely icky. And I get the dark fantasy setting, but, I mean... I want to go back to the problem of mine again, because, as I said, this problem is related to her and her father, the king. We eventually find out the shield hero is actually incredibly important to the demi-humans of the world because they are usually a savior of them. The previous hero was actually killed by the current kingdom's ruling family years ago, and they are the ones who enslaved all the demi-humans to begin with. The original shield hero before Naofumi was a staunch abolitionist, and as the series progresses we can see how the main character starts to move in that direction as well. He rarely uses the seal to punish. At one point, he removes the seal entirely. As Naofumi climbs up from the gutter, we see him trying to redeem himself in a world that threw him away because their religion told them he'd be nice to the furry people. Still, modern abolitionists make a very good point when they say, don't argue with people John Brown would have shot. John Brown was famously an abolitionist who never owned slaves in the United States. His claims that all men were created equal and the golden rule of Christianity dictated that his position on slavery was that it was unjust. He'd grown tired of hearing the peace talks and abolitionist pacifism and declared that it was time for action. Action! So he and his sons started a slavery revolt. They took down several slavers, armed several slaves, and this wasn't a short campaign either, from May of 1856 until his execution in December of 1859, John Brown and his sons killed 5 slavery supporters, commanded anti-slavery forces at the Battle of Blackjack, and the Battle of Osawatomie. He even led a raid on a federal armory at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, and intended to start a slave liberation movement that would have spread south. He even had prepared a provisional constitution for a slavery-free United States. But in seizing the armory, 7 of his people were killed and 10 more were injured. Many fled, and some were captured by the U.S. Marines and Robert E. Lee. Brown was tried for treason and hanged. He was the first person ever executed for treason to the United States. Write that down. The first person killed for treason to the United States was a white slave abolitionist. But let's move on, shall we? What's the point here? Why am I even talking about this? Well, in the series we've written, a couple of different instances where slavery and imprisonment were either obstacles for the hero needs to overcome, or a system utilized by the protagonist who then later reforms from these ways.
Why are you talking about it? Because it needs to be known. A lot of people, I didn't know this.
These stories, the ones that we wrote, can even still be found in earlier renditions, both in To Make a Hero and Reunited. The first is Martin when he comes upon a certain pirate captain in his adult life. The problem here was, how do we square this character being not only a slaver, but someone that Martin grows to have strong feelings for and even a romantic attachment? This is similar to another problem with Rising of the Shield Hero when it comes to Raftalia and Naofumi's relationship. According to the light novels, their romance is entirely one-sided, with Raftalia having feelings for Naofumi, while Naofumi sees her from more of a fatherly perspective. This makes sense since he literally saw her grow up. Now yes, it took significantly less time than a human growing up, and this is apparently an effect of her being a demi-human. But personally, we both started feeling that a hero who falls in love with the person who's willing to own the lives of people, someone like Martin who fought for the freedom of his own people, comes across hypocritical at best and complicit and racist at worst. So it had to change. Slavery, especially chattel slavery, is far too evil and too extreme of a human rights violation, at least for someone like Martin to respect. It's tyrannical, and one of his key phrases is directly opposed to any form of tyrant. I won't go into how the story has changed just yet, but if you want to see the earlier renditions before the changes were enacted, you can actually find the book on Barnes & Nobles. The second one takes place in Reunited and is actually the origin story of Bree's own parents. Initially, her mother was a dragon hunter who killed and captured living dragons, even sentient ones. This was from the initial jump of the series, but after going back and writing Exodus, the book that details out Chaos's life, it became apparent that she just wouldn't be the sort of person to capture a sentient species. And so it had to be reworked a bit when they met. The thing is, Chaos spends hundreds of years going to different planets, meeting different aliens, and the commonality being that every planet has something we'd call a dragon. We wanted dragons to sort of be this unifying mythology all across the galaxy, so that every planet in our series could have its own form of heroes versus the dragon plotline. But also, most extraterrestrial dragons weren't sentient. Therefore, they come across more like just big lizards, dinosaurs, that sort of thing. So when Chaos comes to Earth, now she's surprised by the existence of dragons who can communicate and think for themselves. This sort of diversity of thought led to the change in how their story unfolds, and that is the new climax of Exodus that I can't wait for you guys to see. I'd offer you a place to actually read Reunited, and you know what? Why not? We'll put the PDF for it up on Patreon. I'd rather not send people to the place where it was originally published because, to be frank, we never saw any of the proceeds that came from that company. Creators beware when using self-publishing options. Sometimes they don't all crack out to what you think they'll be. So in working on separating depictions of slavery in stories with what works and what doesn't, it's become necessary that anyone who is involved in a slave trade is doing so as a subversive traitor to the system, which is something that I wish was highlighted more in Shield Hero. Once again, the Shield Hero is meant to be a liberator of demi-humans. So how does this square with Naofumi's usage of slavery from the beginning? Is he ever redeemed of this? This is one of the anime's most debated topics. The story never actually repudiates Naofumi's usage of slavery and tries to use it pragmatically. Largely, this has become an issue of taste. As they say, sometimes you have to be careful what anime you suggest to your friends because everyone has different levels of anime bullshit they'll tolerate. And Isekai is notorious for its anime bullshit. But what the story does do is turn Naofumi into someone who manumits slaves. That is to say, he purchases them in order to set them free. This has historical connotations as well. Well-known abolitionists like Harriet Tubman, Levi Coffin, and Garrett Smith, who all helped run the Underground Railroad, often raised money among free black communities in order to purchase relatives and other slaves, which was noted as being one of the fastest ways to get them to freedom. I know of at least one prominent vampire in Atonement that does this too, but I won't give their name in the off chance this gets back to the wrong people. If anyone in the Dark City learned about this person's involvement, they could be eliminated, and I don't want that kind of blood on my hands. Still, even then, manumitting slaves is something that's also widely debated. Many contemporaries of the above abolitionists spoke out against this method because it had a potential to reward slavers and increase demand. So ultimately, it's going to be up to the individual who's doing the evaluating to determine how they feel about these kinds of solutions, or if it's even a solution at all. One other thing I wanted to bring up related to mine and why her involvement matters so much. I could point to examples like Emmett Till. Emmett Till was a 14-year-old black boy from Chicago who was visiting his family in Mississippi in 1955. During this time, Jim Crow laws were still in effect through much of the South, and the remnants of these backwards laws remains in the so-called sundown towns, where even now, black Americans are not allowed to remain after dark. In sundown towns, they can be followed, stalked, harassed, even killed or kidnapped by civilians or law enforcement. Being from Illinois, Emmett wasn't accustomed to dealing with this cultural difference, and it ended up costing him his life. Emmett Till allegedly made some remarks toward a white store clerk while buying some candy. These remarks were taken to be either flirtatious or disrespectful, and so the clerk, Carolyn Bryant, accused him of assault. Later that day, Carolyn's husband and his brothers arrived at the Till home, armed, and demanded to see the boy from Chicago, referring to Emmett. Despite pleas from his family, the Bryants took Emmett from the home, and this was the last time he was seen alive. I will spare you the gruesome details here, but here's a couple of vagaries to give you an idea of the grimness at stake here. Till's body was fished up days later. An all-white jury deliberated for about an hour before acquitting his killers. His mother insisted on an open casket to show the world what had been done to her son. Pictures published of Emmett shocked the nation and had far-reaching consequences that led to the civil rights movement in the 1960s and even now. Emmett Till's murder inspired Rod Sterling to create The Twilight Zone because his network wouldn't allow him to discuss what had happened, so he created his surreal and often dystopian stories to directly reflect forbidden things he wasn't allowed to discuss on air. Carolyn Bryant later confessed to the kidnapping and murder of Emmett Till, but protected by an acquittal, none of them ever faced any charges. In this way, Carolyn Bryant somewhat mirrors mine, and women have always played a role in upholding white supremacy in the United States. Similar to mine's story, they are always posed as a class that needs protection from the scary black people, from the scary Muslims, from the scary Mexicans, from the scary Asians, from the scary lesbians, from the scary bisexuals, from the scary trans women. Many of them willfully participate in this oppression because they feel it gives them protection and safety. It puts a target on someone else that they can either use to blame for their own misdeeds, or they can become a decoy and a clever ploy in order to be the unnamed and faceless victim. "Someone save our women and children," cry the racists every time. With all that said, because this is definitely a crossover, I'm still going to give you a fanfic. Well, rather, let's have Brie tell you in her own mouth exactly how she'd handle this kind of scenario. If she were to land in the world of the 4 legendary heroes and be reborn as the shield hero. Ironically, with those horns, she'd probably be taken for a demi-human at first, so the setup is perfect for the fallen from grace hero.
Yeah, the distrust I'd get for being a demi-human might not be shared by the other 4 heroes at first. It would depend on how the king and mine spun it. She'd probably still accuse me of something heinous like robbery or threatening her. That's something that happened a lot with black women during the segregation era in the United States. It was the reason segregated restrooms remained, even among women, because it was thought that black women would attack white women. Just because. If we use that allegory here, mine would probably have the other heroes convinced that I was less than human. and somehow vicious and untrustworthy. And because the rest of the kingdom already distrusts demi-humans, I'd be outcast pretty fast and left with no one to party with. It might seem like the shield hero to slaver pipeline is insured, but I think the difference would come with what happens when I actually come across the slave market. See, according to the light novels, the shield hero can still use innate magical abilities and attack with things like fists, feet, and claws. They can't wield any external weapons like a spear, bow, gun, or what have you. That's why I've got claws in this picture, and why I would still be able to use my most effective ability in my arsenal. The Dragonic Breath Weapon. Actually, the same slaver that sold Naofumi Raphtalia would probably still take one look at me and see a demi-human. He wouldn't try to sell me slaves, he'd try to capture me. And that would be his final mistake. Between my claws, my breath weapon, and this special shield called the Shield of the Golden Dragon Paladin, I would just destroy the slaver and destroy the entire market and walk out with an army of freed demi-humans that would join my party. So about that shield. This is an original one designed by me. Every shield the legendary hero wields requires material from a monster or other source in order to affect and grow. Things like rope, glass, blood, hair, and other things can have this effect and unlock entirely new skill trees. This one would take either one of my scales or any scale belonging to a gold dragon. The effect is one that's made to make attackers think twice. After blocking an attack, my dragonic nature is fully revealed as an illusion to the attackers, creating a chance that they flee in terror, drop their weapons, or just surrender, whichever is immediately easiest. With this, I could end most fights before they even begin. And for those who still insisted on being obstinate, they would find that I'm no kind of opponent to actually interfere with. In my heart, I may be a pacifist, but I'm still a freaking dragon. And my mother made sure I knew how to defend myself and others if necessary. It's why I'm always tagging along with Agni. She cracks under pressure. Fragile like a bomb, as they say.
Oh, very clever. I like how you had to throw in that part at the end. Obviously, the world of the 4 legendary heroes has never seen a force like Bree. She'd overturn not just the entire slave trade, but everything about how that world works. Talk about power scaling. Thank you everyone for your continued support, and I look forward to giving you even more in the future. Our community keeps expanding with authentic viewers and subscribers that tune in every week excited for the next installment. Whether that's listening to my world-building rants or tuning in for a full episode, you're the ones that keep this channel afloat against the unforgiving algorithm that keeps trying to douse the flame. That's the meaning of many a mickle max a muckle. Many smaller things making a big thing. And now, a shout out to our patrons and channel members.
Plebe64 Potato,
Mr. Lobo King 8778,
P64P,
Regios001,
Jack Plays K Plays,
Maria Elsa 6363,
Moose Now,
El Dragon Biano 3742,
Jack McLeod,
Persephoroth,
Josh is Mary,
Runaway Train 2502,
EA Shadow Gamer.
Sigma LaFleur,
Crochet Whimsy 413.
Anubian the 1335,
Angels Art and Gaming.
Aisha Kashif,
Pluve 81.
Aegis Knight,
7-Star Sanctuary.
and Chained Furry,
T. Mitchell Carr.
MB Durg Wraith,
Emily Masternardi.
Heinrich 28,
Shadow Fox.
Arya Gamari,
Charles Tam.
Jace Moreland,
Pammy Poo.
and Lunder Lumen.